What would you risk to save a weapon that was never meant to feel? When they gave him a broken alien girl, they never expected him to fight for her soul. The Dominion didn't ask, they just dumped her there broken and forgotten. I still remember that day. The rusty metal walls of Kuros dock creaking under the strain of its own weight, duct particles dancing in the sparse light that filtered through the viewport. My hands were covered in engine grease as I tinkered with the hyperdrive motivator of my ship, the Last Horizon. She wasn't much to look at, but she was mine patched together from salvage and contraband, parts I'd collected over years of courier runs. Outside, the twin suns of the Korendi system cast long shadows across the landing pad. One burning red, one fading yellow, like dying embers in a forgotten hearth. Kuros dock orbited a barren moon that nobody wanted in a system that nobody visited, perfect for a man trying to disappear. I'd been working on the hyperdrive all morning. The diagnostics kept showing cascade failures in the tertiary systems, nothing that would strand us in space but enough to make jumps unpredictable. In my line of work, what was left of it anyway, unpredictable meant dead. "Come on, you stubborn piece of junk," I muttered, recalibrating the crystalline matrix for the third time. The hyperdrive responded with a half-hearted hum before falling silent again. I threw my multi-tool across the engine room in frustration. It clattered against the bulkhead, leaving yet another dent among dozens. That's when I heard it. The unmistakable, high-pitched whine of a Dominion diplomatic shuttle breaking atmosphere. I froze. Nobody comes to Kuros not willingly, and certainly not the Dominion. This forgotten outpost at the edge of charted space was where careers and lives came to die. I quickly shut down the diagnostic system and pulled my worn leather jacket from the back of the pilot's chair. 5 years I'd been hiding from the Dominion, 5 years since I'd escaped their justice after the Talon incident. Had they finally tracked me down? My hand instinctively went to the blaster holstered at my hip. Not that it would do much good against the Dominion strike team. I wiped my hands on an already filthy rag and stepped outside onto the landing pad. The shuttle's sleek, pearl-white hull was a stark contrast to the rust and decay of Kuros. It hummed as it settled on the landing pad, its engines sending swirls of dust into the stagnant air. The vessel bore the distinctive crimson helix insignia of the Dominion's diplomatic corps. Not military, at least. Small comfort. The few other inhabitants of Kuros, mostly smugglers, exiles, and those too broken to return to civilization, had all scurried into hiding. Smart. I stood alone on the landing pad, heart hammering in my chest, but face carefully blank. 5 years of practice, hiding every emotion, had its uses. The ramp extended with military precision, and out walked 3 figures in pristine Dominion uniforms. Their faces were a mask of disgust as they surveyed their surroundings. The leader, a tall woman with sharp features and even sharper eyes, approached me. Her rank insignia marked her as a commander high enough to be dangerous, not high enough to be merciful. "Jace Renn," she asked, though I knew she already had my file. Her accent was pure core world's aristocracy, each syllable perfectly enunciated like cut crystal. I nodded, keeping my expression neutral despite the cold fear crawling up my spine. "Haven't heard that name in a while. What does the Dominion want with a junker on a forgotten rock?" She smiled without warmth. "Don't play coy, Mr. Renn. Your particular talents haven't been forgotten, even if you'd like them to be." The 2 officers flanking her, a burly man with augmented eyes and a shorter woman whose hand never strayed far from her sidearm, scanned the area continuously, looking for threats, for escape routes, or both. "We have a delivery for you." Her voice was clinical, devoid of emotion. "Considerate payment for past services rendered." I tensed. The Dominion didn't believe in payments, only debts and leverage. I don't recall rendering any services to the Dominion. Quite the opposite, in fact. The incident at Vega Prime has been reclassified. Call it a mutual misunderstanding. She gestured casually as if wiping away the deaths of dozens, including Talon. Water under the bridge, as the old Earth saying goes. Before I could respond, 2 hovering freight drones descended from the shuttle, carrying between them a cracked stasis pod. They set it down on the worn metal of the landing pad with little care. The pod was military-grade, but older, with scratches and scorch marks along its surface. Whatever was inside had seen action, or worse. "What is this?" I asked, circling the pod cautiously. Through the frosted glass, I could make out a humanoid form. slender, smaller than average. The pod's status lights flickered erratically, not a good sign. The officer's lips curled into what might have been a smile on anyone else. Not what? A thing. An asset that's outlived its primary use but might still have salvage value for someone like you. Her words sent a chill through me that had nothing to do with Kuros's perpetually failing environmental systems. The Dominion's casual cruelty never ceased to disgust me, even after all I'd seen. Salvage value, I repeated flatly. You're giving me a person. She laughed, a sound like breaking glass. Oh, Mr. Renn, to shed your provincial morality, it's hardly a person anymore. Enhanced, conditioned, and now unfortunately damaged beyond repair for our purposes. But the tech alone... She trailed off, eyeing me as if gauging my interest. The memory of Talon, my best friend, my brother in all but blood, flashed before my eyes. His face contorted in pain as the Dominion forces opened fire on our position. His final words, "Run, Jace. Someone has to tell the truth." A betrayal that was supposed to claim both our lives, but only got one. I'd spent 5 years trying to forget, trying to disappear. 5 years of nightmares where I saw his body fall again and again while I ran. I don't want it, I said firmly, stepping away from the pod. The commander's expression hardened. It's not a request. Her hand moved to her collar, activating a comm device. Besides your colorful past, suggests you're familiar with handling sensitive cargo. Process it, sell it, scrap it, I don't care, but it's yours now. The burly officer stepped forward, thrusting a data pad at me. Authorization and transfer documents. Your thumbprint, please. I stared at the pad, unmoving. And if I refuse, the commander saw it as if dealing with a particularly dim child. Then we revisit the Vega Prime incident with fresh eyes. I believe the penalty for treason against the Dominion is still execution, is it not? Lieutenant, along with seizure of all assets and interrogation of known associates, the burly man added with enthusiasm. I thought of the handful of people I still cared about scattered across the outer rim, wishing the Dominion would hunt them down without mercy if they reopened my case. Jaw clenched, I pressed my thumb to the datapad. It beeped, confirming the transfer. Excellent, the commander said, taking back the pad. Always a pleasure doing business with reasonable people. As they boarded their shuttle, she paused at the top of the ramp. Oh, and Renn, don't try to run. This makes us even. But any attempt to contact authorities about this transaction will void our arrangement. Her smile returned sharp as a blade. I'm sure you understand. The shuttle's engines roared to life, and within moments they were gone, leaving me alone with the mysterious pod. The few inhabitants of Kuros began emerging from their hiding places, eyeing me and my new acquisition with a mixture of curiosity and wariness. Nothing to see here, I called out, waving them away. Just a delivery. Old Garza, who ran what passed for a cantina on Kuros, spat on the ground. Dominion never delivers anything but trouble, boy. I couldn't argue with that. With a sigh, I turned back to the pod. The status panel was flashing red now, critical system failure imminent. Whatever was inside didn't have long. With reluctance, I approached it. The control panel flickered weakly, indicating failing power. Whatever or whoever was inside wouldn't survive much longer without intervention. I cleared away the frost with my sleeve and peered inside. My breath caught. It was a girl, or at least something that looked like one. Her skin was a dusky violet, contrasting with silver-white hair that floated in the suspension fluid. What struck me most were the cybernetic implants fused into her body, her right arm entirely mechanical from the elbow down, intricate circuitry visible beneath translucent sections of her skin. But the implants looked damaged, as if they'd been hastily repaired multiple times. Her face was serene in artificial sleep, youthful yet somehow ancient. Markings in a deeper purple traced patterns down her temples and neck, disappearing beneath the medical gown she wore. I'd seen her species before in the core worlds, Elysians, I thought they were called. Rare since their homeworld was destroyed during the colonial wars decades ago. I had choices. The Dominion officer was right, there was value here. The cybernetics alone would fetch a good price in the right markets. Kelser's crew over on Delta Station would pay handsomely for Dominion tech, no questions asked. Or I could just walk away, let the pod run out of power. Not my problem. But as I looked at her peaceful face, something twisted in my gut. The same something that had been twisting since I'd watched Talon die while I ran. He died trying to expose Dominion atrocities, human experimentation, forced enhancements, neural conditioning. And here was living proof floating right in front of me. Damn it, I muttered, inputting the emergency override code on the pod, a universal backdoor courtesy of my less-than-legal past. The pod hissed as the seal broke and the suspension fluid began to drain. Warning alerts blared, medical protocols, violated stabilization procedures interrupted. I silenced them with another code. I had no idea what I was getting myself into. But for the first time in 5 years, I was doing something that felt right. As the fluid drained, the pod's internal support systems lowered her gently to the bottom. Up close, the damage to her implants was even more apparent. Microfractures in the metal, exposed circuitry pulsing with faint blue light areas where the integration with her flesh had begun to deteriorate. What had they done to her? And more importantly, what had they been using her for? I tried accessing the pod's memory core, but it had been wiped clean. Another Dominion precaution: leave no evidence behind. The only data remaining was basic life support information, oxygen levels, nutrient intake requirements, and core temperature guidelines. Nothing about her identity or purpose. The bitter wind of Kuros whipped around me as I worked the twin suns beginning to set. I needed to get her inside soon, both for her safety and to avoid the prying eyes of Kuros's less savory inhabitants. Damaged Dominion tech would attract the kind of attention I'd spent years avoiding. The pod system sputtered as the last of the fluid drained away. The girl, if that's what she was, remained motionless, her chest barely rising with shallow breaths. Up close, I could see the extent of the damage. The implants weren't just failing, they were rejecting, causing inflammation where metal met flesh. Angry red lines spread outward from each connection point like electric fingers of infection. I'd seen similar rejections in veterans who couldn't afford proper maintenance for their military-grade prosthetics. It was always ugly, often fatal, without intervention. "Hey," I said softly, reaching out to check for a pulse at her neck. "Can you hear me?" Her skin was unnaturally warm beneath my fingers. I found a pulse rapid and irregular. As my fingers touched her neck, the cybernetic implants embedded there flickered to life, illuminating with a soft blue glow that traced patterns under her skin like electronic veins. Her eyes snapped open, startling luminous gold with no visible pupils, and her body convulsed. A strangled sound escaped her lips as her mechanical arm jerked uncontrollably, sparks flying from the elbow joint. Her back arched, and for a moment I thought she was dying. Then just as suddenly she went limp, eyes still open but vacant, staring at nothing. The blue glow of her implants pulsed once, twice, then faded to a dim flicker. "Shit, shit, shit," I hissed, scanning the pod for any medical equipment or data that might help. There was nothing. They'd stripped it before dumping it here. I had basic medical supplies on my ship, but nothing that could handle whatever this was. This was advanced Dominion tech, not something you could patch with a med kit and good intentions. The last rays of the setting suns cast long shadows across the landing pad. Night on Kuros brought its own dangers. Temperatures dropped well below freezing, and the station's more predatory residents emerged to conduct their business. I needed to move her now. I carefully lifted her from the pod. She was surprisingly light, as if the cybernetics were made from some advanced alloy I'd never encountered before. Her skin was fever hot where it touched mine, a stark contrast to the cooling air around us. Her head lolled against my shoulder, silver white hair falling across her face. As I carried her toward the last horizon, a voice called out from behind me, "You won't save her with bandages and antiseptic, Renn." I turned instinctively, shifting my body to shield the girl from potential threat. Kellen Vort leaned against a stack of cargo containers, arms crossed, watching me with those unnervingly intelligent eyes of his. The fallen Dominion researcher had shown up at Kuros about a year ago, keeping to himself and trading medical help for necessities. Rumor had it he'd been high-ranking before something went wrong. Very wrong. Vort looked the part of a disgraced scientist, tall and gaunt, with prematurely gray hair, and the perpetually distracted air of someone whose mind was always working on multiple problems simultaneously. His clothes were core world quality, but worn and patched. The only thing that betrayed his past was a small Dominion medical corps tattoo on his wrist that he tried unsuccessfully to have removed. I don't remember asking for your opinion, Vort, I replied, continuing toward my ship. The girl's breathing had become more labored, little whimpers escaping her lips with each exhale. He pushed off from the containers and followed me. Those are Siren implants, military-grade neural integration tech. They're failing because they're meant to be monitored by Dominion systems. Without the connection, they're going into cascade failure. He spoke quickly, clinically, like he was giving a lecture. The seizure you just witnessed, that's just the beginning. Next comes organ failure, then death. Messy, painful death. I paused at the ramp of my ship. And you know this, how a shadow passed over his face. Let's just say my research had applications the Dominion found useful. His eyes fixed on the girl's face, a complex mixture of emotions crossing his features. Recognition guilt, it was gone too quickly to tell. I studied him for a moment. Vort had the look of a man running from his past, a feeling I knew all too well. Can you help her? Maybe, he replied, his eyes fixed on the girl in my arms. Her mechanical fingers twitched spasmodically, leaving small scratches on my jacket. The neural integration is extensive. I need to see the full schematics, but he hesitated, then met my gaze directly. I can stabilize her, at least temporarily, but I'll want something in return. Name it. When the time comes, I want passage off this rock. No questions asked. His expression was deadly serious. That shuttle's appearance has stirred interest. The wrong kind. I may need to leave sooner rather than later. I nodded. Deal. Now help me get her inside before those implants kill her. Kellen followed me into the last horizon. I'd converted the secondary cargo hold into living quarters years ago, cramped but serviceable. A fold-down bed, a small cooking area, storage compartments built into every available surface. I laid her down on my bunk and stepped back as Kellen examined her. Fascinating, he murmured gently, turning her mechanical arm to examine the connection point. This is advanced even by Dominion standards. The neural integration is extraordinary. See these filaments? He pointed to nearly microscopic blue threads that ran from the metal into her flesh. Biosynthetic neural pathways. They've literally rewired her nervous system to interface with the technology. Less admiring, more fixing, I said, sharply uncomfortable with the clinical detachment in his voice. He shot me a look but nodded. I'll need tools. Micro-soldering equipment, diagnostic scanners, if you have them, and medical supplies, antibiotics, anti-inflammatories, regenerative compounds, if you've got any. I'll see what I can find, I said, heading to the storage lockers where I kept my repair equipment. Most of it was for ship maintenance, but some of the finer tools might work. What exactly is a Siren? I called back over my shoulder. Kellen was silent for a moment, his hands moving carefully over the girl's implants. The Siren project was classified. Even within the Dominion, few knew the details. He paused. They take people with natural empathic abilities and enhance them, create living weapons that can influence emotions, manipulate neural patterns, even control the most basic body functions in a target. And I returned with an armful of tools and medical supplies. You're telling me they turned her into some kind of mind controller? More subtle than that. Kellen selected a microscanner from the pile and began running it over her arm. Think of it as extreme emotional manipulation. Fear, trust, desire, the building blocks of human behavior. A fully trained Siren can make you terrified of your own shadow or trust them with your deepest secrets within minutes of meeting them. He glanced up at me. Very useful for a regime that rules through control rather than consent. The implications made my skin crawl. Is that what she'll do when she wakes up? Try to control us. If she were functional, perhaps, but these implants are failing spectacularly. He pointed to the scanner's readout. The connection between the organic and synthetic neural pathways is degrading. And see this? He indicated a small device at the base of her skull. Control module. It's supposed to regulate the implants and limit her autonomy. It's damaged beyond repair. So she's broken. Can you fix her? Kellen gave me a strange look. Fix her? I'm not sure what that means in this context, Renn. Restore her to Dominion specifications as a weapon? Unlikely, and I wouldn't if I could. Help her survive the rejection of these implants, perhaps. He turned back to his work, selecting a precision tool from the pile. First, we need to stabilize the core implants and prevent further rejection. Then we can worry about who or what she'll be when, if she regains consciousness. For the next several hours, I assisted Kellen as he worked on the girl. It was delicate, painstaking labor. He'd isolate a failing implant connection, carefully disconnect it from the damaged control systems, then reconfigure it to function independently. Sometimes he'd curse under his breath in scientific jargon I couldn't follow. Other times he'd work in complete silence, his concentration absolute. The girl remained unconscious throughout, though occasionally her body would twitch or her lips would move as if trying to speak. No actual words came out, just soft pain sounds that made something in my chest tighten. "Hold this," Kellen instructed, handing me a small device attached to her temple. "It's maintaining the electrical rhythm of the neural pathways while I reroute this cluster." I took the device carefully. "How do you know so much about this tech? You said the Siren project was classified." His hands continued working with machine-like precision, but his voice changed, became distant. "I designed the initial neural pathways before I understood what they would be used for." A pause. "Before I saw the first test subjects. You helped create these sirens." "I helped develop technology to assist patients with severe neurological damage," he corrected sharply. Then more quietly, "The Dominion merely repurposed my research." I wanted to press him further, but the girl suddenly convulsed again, her back arching off the bed. The device in my hand sparked painfully. Kellen cursed and quickly adjusted something in her neck implant. After a tense moment, she relaxed again. "Her system is fighting the changes," he explained, wiping sweat from his brow. "The Dominion conditions them to reject any unauthorized modifications. It's a security measure. So her own body is programmed to resist help, in a manner of speaking." He sighed. "This would be easier if we had access to her full technical specifications." As if in response to his words, the girl's lips moved again, forming what looked like actual words this time. I leaned closer, trying to make them out. "What's she saying?" Kellen asked, not looking up from his work. "Not sure," I replied. "Something about a vault siren, something." Kellen's hands froze. "Siren vault? Is she saying siren vault?" I watched her lips move again. "I think so, yeah. What's that mean to you?" "The vault is where they keep all the technical data on the sirens. Full schematics, conditioning, protocols, everything." His eyes had a strange gleam to them. "If we could access that data, let me guess it's in some highly secure Dominion facility. Most likely on the Bastion, the Dominion's central research station." He returned to his work, but I could see his mind was racing. "But the fact that she's mentioning it? Interesting. She shouldn't have conscious memory of the vault. Those memories are typically suppressed." Another hour passed before Kellen finally sat back, exhaustion evident on his face. "I've done what I can for now. The primary neural pathways are stabilized, and I've isolated the most severely damaged implants. She should be stable, at least temporarily." I looked at the girl. Her breathing had steadied, and the angry red inflammation around her implants had subsided somewhat. "Will she wake up?" "Eventually, yes, but I don't know who or what will wake up." Kellen began cleaning the tools methodically. "The control module is beyond repair, which means the Dominion's conditioning may be compromised. She might remember her training, her purpose, or she might remember nothing at all. But she'll be herself, not some Dominion puppet." Kellen gave me that strange look again. "I'm not sure she knows who herself is anymore, Renn. The Dominion doesn't just add technology to their sirens, they remake them from the inside out. Memories, personality, identity, all reconstructed to serve their purpose." A cold feeling settled in my gut. "So what do we do when she wakes up?" "Be careful." He stood stretching his cramped muscles. "Even damaged, even without the control module, she's been extensively trained. And we have no idea what her last orders were." After Kellen left, promising to return the next day to check on her, I sat beside the bunk watching the girl's steady breathing. Who was she before the Dominion got their hands on her? Did she have a family somewhere, a home, a name? Or had all that been erased replaced with whatever the Dominion wanted her to be? I thought of Talon again. of his final mission to expose what the Dominion was doing to people in their black site research facilities. Had he known about the Sirens? Was this what he died trying to reveal to the galaxy? "Who are you?" I whispered to the sleeping girl. Her eyelids fluttered in response, but she didn't wake. I must have dozed off in the chair because the next thing I knew, a soft whimpering sound jolted me awake. The girl was trembling, her face contorted in what looked like pain or fear. Her mechanical arm clutched at the blanket I'd laid over her, the fingers spasming erratically. "Hey, it's okay," I said, not sure if she could hear me. "You're safe." Her eyes opened, those strange golden eyes without pupils, but they were unfocused, seeing something that wasn't there. "Compliance is rewarded," she whispered, her voice hoarse and uncertain. Resistance is... No, please. Recalibration required." A nightmare or a memory, I couldn't tell. I hesitated, then gently took her organic hand in mine. "No one's going to hurt you here. You're free of them." At my touch, her eyes seemed to focus briefly. She stared at me with an intensity that was almost physical. "Subject J724, reporting for... Her voice broke, confusion replacing the mechanical cadence. Who am I reporting to?" "No one," I said firmly. "You don't have to report to anyone anymore." Her brow furrowed as if this concept was impossible to process. "Directive, Hada, unclear. Request clarification." Her grip on my hand tightened painfully, then abruptly released as her eyes rolled back and she slipped into unconsciousness again. I sat back, rubbing my hand. Whatever the Dominion had done to her went deep beyond the physical implants and into her very sense of self. I wasn't equipped for this. Hell, I could barely keep my ship running, let alone help someone whose mind had been systematically dismantled and rebuilt. But I couldn't just abandon her either. Not after seeing that brief flash of confusion of personhood fighting through the conditioning. And certainly not after hearing her whisper those strange broken phrases that hinted at what had been done to her. The next morning, Kellen returned as promised, bringing with him a small case of medical supplies. "Borrowed from what passes for a clinic here," he explained, setting up to examine her again. "She woke up, sort of," I told him, describing the brief disjointed conversation. Kellen nodded, unsurprised. "Breakthrough consciousness. The organic mind asserting itself against the conditioning. It's actually a good sign, means the control module's influence is definitely weakening." She was scared, confused. I imagine she was. He checked various implants methodically. "The transition won't be easy. Think of it as someone waking from a vivid years-long dream, only to find reality is nothing like what they thought they knew." "Will she recover, become whoever she was before?" Kellen paused his examination. "That's complicated. The Dominion typically selects Sirens very young when the personality is still forming, and the neurological changes are extensive." He sighed, and the person she was may not exist anymore, not fully, but someone new could emerge, a combination of her original self and what the Dominion made her into minus their control. It wasn't the answer I wanted, but I appreciated his honesty. "What can we do to help that happen?" "Stability, safety," he gestured to the ship around us. "A place where she can rediscover herself without fear of punishment or recalibration." The word made me remember her nightmare pleas. And patience. Lots of patience. As days passed, she drifted in and out of consciousness. Sometimes she'd be almost lucid, asking confused questions about where she was or what had happened to her unit. Other times, she'd recite what sounded like mission parameters or training protocols, her voice flat and mechanical. And sometimes she'd just stare silently at the ceiling, tears streaming down her face without a sound. Kellen continued his treatments, gradually stabilizing more of her implants and reducing the inflammation where technology met flesh. He explained that he was trying to reconfigure the neural pathways to function independently rather than as part of the Dominion's control network. "Think of it as converting a slave system into an autonomous one," he said one evening, making minute adjustments to the implant at the base of her skull. "Instead of receiving commands from outside, these implants will respond only to her own neural impulses." "Will she still have abilities?" I asked. "The emotional manipulation thing?" He shrugged. "Hard to say. Those capabilities are partially natural, an extension of Elysian empathic talents, and partially technological. She might retain some of them, but without the amplification and focus the control module provided. He trailed off, then added more softly, "Perhaps it's better if she doesn't. Such power comes with its own burdens." On the 5th day, there was a breakthrough. I was shouting beside her, reading a technical manual on hyperdrive recalibration, when I felt her watching me. I looked up to find those golden eyes fixed on my face, clearer and more present than I'd seen them before. "You're the one who opened the pod," she said. Her voice was still rough from disuse, but the mechanical cadence was gone, replaced by something softer, with a slight musical lilt I hadn't noticed before. I set down the manual. "Yeah, that was me." She studied me with unnerving intensity. "Why?" It was a simple question with a complicated answer. I opted for the truth. "Because the Dominion has taken enough. Because what they did to you was wrong." "Wrong," she repeated as if testing the word. "Inefficient, perhaps. I was damaged during the last operation. Efficiency decreased by 27.3%. Not inefficient, wrong. Morally wrong." Her brow furrowed. "Morality is subjective. Operational parameters are absolute." I sighed. This was going to be harder than I thought. "What's your name?" The question seemed to confuse her. "Designation J724, Siren Project Empathic Division." "That's not a name, that's a label. What did people call you before the Dominion?" She blinked, and for a moment something flickered across her face, a memory perhaps, or the ghost of one. "I don't remember. It was long ago." "Would you like a name? Something besides a designation?" She considered this carefully, her implants pulsing softly with blue light as she thought. "Names are for persons. The Dominion says I am equipment, specialized equipment." "The Dominion is wrong," I said firmly, "and they're not here anymore. You're not their equipment. You're a person, and persons have names." She was silent for a long moment, processing this. Finally, she said, "In my dreams, sometimes I hear music, a song without words. It feels familiar." "Would you like a name that has to do with music?" She nodded slowly. "Yes, I think I would like that." I thought for a moment. "How about Nova? It means new, like a new start. And there's something musical about it, I think." "Nova," she repeated, testing the sound of it. A small, hesitant smile touched her lips, the first I'd seen. "Yes, I am Nova." It felt like a victory, small but significant. "Nice to meet you, Nova. I'm Jace." "Jace," she echoed, "not designate." She stopped herself, a look of concentration on her face. "Jace? You are Jace." Another smile, a bit stronger this time. "And I am Nova." The days that followed showed slow but steady progress. Nova's periods of lucidity grew longer, though she still had episodes where she'd slip back into Dominion protocols, reciting compliance mantras or asking for mission parameters. Kellen explained these as conditioning echoes, reflexive neural patterns that would take time to fade. Physically, she was improving too. Kellen's treatments had stabilized most of her implants, reducing the painful rejections and allowing her body to begin healing around the technology. She could sit up now, even stand for short periods, though her movements were often jerky and uncoordinated as she relearned how to control her partially mechanical body without the Dominion's guidance. One afternoon, about 2 weeks after her arrival, I found her staring out the small viewport in the living quarters, watching the perpetual dust storms that swept across Kuros' surface. "See anything interesting out there?" I asked, setting down a tray with the nutrient supplement Kellen had prescribed for her. "It never rains here," she observed. Her voice had grown stronger, more natural, though there was still something slightly off about her cadence, as if she was translating her thoughts from another language before speaking. "Not on Kuros, no. Just dust and more dust." She turned to me, her golden eyes thoughtful. "I remember rain, I think. Warm rain on skin." She looked down at her mechanical arm, flexing the fingers thoughtfully. "On some skin. Progress. Every day more fragments of memory, more hints of the person beneath the Dominion's programming." "Where did it rain? Do you remember?" She frowned in concentration. "Trees. Tall trees with silver leaves. The rain made them sing." Her organic hand moved unconsciously, fingers tracing patterns in the air, as if following music only she could hear. Elysium? That was home? Before the Dominion, she nodded slowly. They came when I was small, said I had a gift, said I could help. I'd been doing research during Nova's recovery, digging through whatever information I could find on Elysium and its people. It wasn't much. Most records were lost when the planet was destroyed, and the Dominion controlled the narrative about what had happened there. But I'd found fragments enough to piece together a partial history. The Elysians were known for their empathic abilities, I said carefully, natural empaths who could sense and sometimes influence emotions. She nodded. We called it the harmony, feeling others being felt. It was gentle, subtle. Her mechanical fingers tapped against the viewport, creating a soft rhythmic pattern. What they made me into is not gentle, not subtle. What did they make you do, Nova? I asked the question that had been hovering between us since she'd first truly awakened. She was quiet for so long, I thought she wouldn't answer. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely a whisper. Interrogations, compliance enforcement, sometimes field operations. She turned away from the viewport, her expression haunted. I made people trust when they shouldn't, fear when there was nothing to fear, made them tell secrets, do things. Her voice broke. I remember their faces, every one. I wanted to tell her it wasn't her fault that she'd been used as a tool against her will, but platitudes seemed hollow in the face of her genuine remorse. Instead, I simply asked, is that why the Dominion discarded you? Because you didn't want to do it anymore? No, boss. She looked down at her hands, one flesh, one metal. I never had a choice. They made sure of that. I was damaged during an operation on Terminus 3. Insurgents had countermeasure sonic disruptors that interfered with the neural implants. 3 of my unit died instantly. I survived, but compromised. Efficiency reduced. Not worth repairing, they decided. The casual cruelty of it made my blood boil. Use people up and throw them away when they break the Dominion's standard operating procedure. I'd seen it countless times during my courier days running supplies to worlds the Dominion had strip-mined and abandoned. Their loss, I said, trying to keep the anger from my voice. Their loss, our gain. She tilted her head, studying me with those disconcerting golden eyes. You are not afraid of me, even knowing what I am. I'm afraid of what they made you do, I corrected. Not of you. Something shifted in her expression, subtle but profound. For just a moment, I thought I saw hope flicker across her features. A sudden squawk from the ship's intercom broke the moment. Bren, you there? Kellen's voice tense and hurried. I moved to the comm panel. What's up, Vort? We may have a problem. That Dominion shuttle, it's been noticed. Questions are being asked around the station. The kind of questions that tend to precede official inquiries. I swore under my breath. How long do we have? Hard to say, days, maybe less. I'm collecting my research and essential supplies. Suggest you do the same. Understood, thanks for the heads up. After signing off, I turned back to Nova, who was watching me with a wary expression. The Dominion is coming for me, she stated, not a question. Not if I can help it, I replied, already mentally cataloging what we'd need to take and what could be left behind. How are you feeling? Strong enough to move, if we need to? She straightened, squaring her shoulders with visible effort. I will be ready. There was determination in her voice that hadn't been there before, a spark of her own will asserting itself against years of conditioning. The next morning, I decided to test how far Nova's recovery had progressed. The last horizon was docked near the edge of one of Kuros's few functional platforms, with a view of the barren moon's surface below. It wasn't much to look at, just dust and rock, but it was outside, away from the confines of the ship. Want to go for a short walk? I asked Nova as she finished the nutrient supplement that had become her breakfast. Get some fresh air, well, as fresh as it gets on Kuros. She hesitated, then nodded. I would like to try. I helped her dress in some spare clothes I'd found too big for her slender frame, but better than the medical gown she'd arrived in. She moved carefully, still getting used to coordinating her partially mechanical body without the Dominion's control systems. The station's recycled air hit us as we exited the ship, stale and tinged with the metallic smell of the dust that permeated everything on Kuros. Nova paused at the top of the ramp, her eyes widening as she took in the open space of the landing pad and the vast empty landscape beyond. "It's so big," she whispered, her organic hand instinctively reaching for support. I offered my arm and she gripped it tightly. "Take it slow," I advised as she took her first tentative steps down the ramp. "No rush." Her movements were stiff, uncertain, a strange contrast to the fluid grace I imagined she once possessed. The implants in her legs whirred softly as they adjusted to her commands, sometimes overcompensating, sometimes not responding quickly enough. "Recalibration. Necessary," she murmured, slipping momentarily into the mechanical speech patterns of her conditioning. Then with visible effort, she corrected herself. "I mean, I need practice." "That's what this is for," I assured her, steadying her as she reached the bottom of the ramp. We made it about 20 meters from the ship, walking slowly along the edge of the platform. Nova stopped frequently, sometimes to rest, sometimes to simply stare at the horizon or the stars visible even in Kuros's dim daylight. Each time I waited patiently, letting her set the pace. "Something's coming," she said suddenly, her head tilting as if listening to something I couldn't hear. I scanned the sky, seeing nothing. "What do you mean where not here, not yet?" She frowned, struggling to articulate what she was sensing. "It's like waves, ripples in emotion, fear moving ahead of something." "You can feel that?" I asked, wondering if her Elysian empathic abilities were reasserting themselves. "Not clearly, not like before." She tapped the implant at her temple. "These enhanced it, focused it like a weapon. Now it's muffled, but still there." Before I could ask more, a sound caught my attention, the soft patter of moisture hitting metal. I looked up to see dark clouds gathering above the station, a rare meteorological event on arid Kuros. "Is that?" Nova began, her expression one of wonder. "Rain," I confirmed as the first drops began to fall around us. "Happens maybe once a year here." The rain came faster, warm and slightly acidic, typical of Kuros's polluted atmosphere. Most of the station's residents would be hurrying for cover, but Nova stood transfixed, her face tilted up to the clouds. Water ran down her face, plastering her silver-white hair to her scalp and neck. Her eyes were closed, lips slightly parted as she let the sensation wash over her. The blue implants beneath her skin seemed to pulse in rhythm with the falling rain. And then so subtle I almost missed it, she smiled. A real smile, not the hesitant, uncertain ones I'd seen before. This was pure joy, unfiltered by conditioning or confusion. For that brief moment, she wasn't J724 or even Nova, the recovering Siren. She was simply a woman feeling rain on her skin, perhaps for the first time in years. It was the most human I'd seen her, and something shifted in my chest at the sight, a protective instinct that went beyond obligation or defiance of the Dominion. I wanted her to have this moment, this freedom, this chance to rediscover joy in simple things. "Thank you," she said softly, opening her golden eyes to look at me. Water dripped from her lashes, making them sparkle in the dim light. "For this, for everything." Before I could respond, a klaxon sounded from the central hub of the station, the warning signal for an unscheduled ship arrival. Nova tensed immediately, her momentary peace shattered. "We need to get back," I said, taking her elbow gently. "Could be nothing but better not to take chances." She nodded, suddenly all business. Her movements back toward the ship were more determined, pushing through the discomfort and awkwardness, with a focus that reminded me she'd been trained as a weapon, regardless of what else she might be. As we reached the last horizon, Kellen was waiting at the top of the ramp, his expression grim. "Dominion patrol vessel just entered the system," he reported without preamble. "Standard configuration for a reclamation team." My stomach dropped. "They're coming for her." "Most likely. They'll claim it's routine checking registrations, looking for contraband, but the timing is suspicious." Nova had gone very still beside me, her face once again the expressionless mask I'd seen when she first emerged from the pod. "They will take me back," she stated flatly. "Recalibrate, repurpose, or terminate?" "No," I said firmly, guiding her up the ramp. "They won't. We're leaving." Kellen raised an eyebrow. "The hyperdrive is functional enough for a short jump." I cut him off. "We'll make for Helios Station, lose ourselves in the traffic is there, then figure out our next move." "And the payment we discussed," Kellen's eyes darted nervously toward the central hub where activity was visibly increasing. I nodded. "Deal's a deal. Get your things. We leave in 30 minutes. As Kellen hurried off to collect his belongings, I led Nova inside and began the pre-flight checks. The last Horizon wasn't the fastest or stealthiest ship, but she had a few modifications that didn't appear in any registry, including a transponder that could mask our signature for short periods. "I can help," Nova said, watching as I moved through the cockpit, flipping switches and initializing systems. I glanced at her doubtful. "You know ships. The Dominion trained us in various vehicles. Extraction protocols required flexibility." She moved to the co-pilot seat with more confidence than I'd seen her display before, her mechanical fingers hovering over the controls. "May I?" I hesitated only briefly before nodding. "Navigation panel is yours. Plot a course to Helios Station. It's in the Erebus sector." She worked with surprising efficiency, her implants glowing more brightly as she interfaced with the ship's systems. I wondered if her cybernetics were somehow connecting directly with the navigation computer, but didn't have time to ask. "Course plotted," she announced. "Optimal jump coordinates calculated." "Good. Now we just need—" The comms crackled to life, interrupting me. "Attention vessel designated Last Horizon. This is Dominion Control. All departures are suspended pending a standard inspection. Power down your engines and prepare for boarding." I swore colorfully, switching off the external comms before they could hear me. They're moving faster than I expected. Nova's expression had gone blank again, but I could see the fear in her eyes. They know I'm here. They can sense the implants. Every Siren has a unique neural signature. That explained the rush. Reclamation wasn't routine. It was specifically for her. "Well, they'll have to catch us first," I muttered, firing up the main engines. "Strap in. This might get rough." The ship shuddered as the engines roared to life, protests already coming in over the comm system. I ignored them, focusing instead on the launch sequence. We'd need clearance from the docking clamps to actually leave, but those could be overridden with the right codes or the right amount of brute force. Kellen burst into the cockpit, breathing hard, a small case clutched in his hands. "They've deployed troops on the platform standard containment pattern." "Perfect," I growled, diverting power to the shields. "Our day just keeps getting better." The Last Horizon lifted slightly on her landing struts, straining against the docking clamps. I could force it break free with raw engine power, but the damage might cripple us before we cleared atmosphere. Nova's mechanical hands suddenly shot out, gripping my wrist. "Wait," she said, her voice distant, as if she were focusing on something far away. The implants at her temples and along her neck pulsed with bright blue light. I can feel them, their intentions, their commands. "The Dominion troops?" I asked, incredulous. She nodded slowly. "They're looking for a Siren, for me, but they don't know." Her brow furrowed in concentration. "They don't know what I look like, only the neural signature." "Can you hide it, mask it somehow?" Her golden eyes locked with mine. "I can try. The control module is damaged, but some functions remain. If I can reroute through the secondary pathways." She closed her eyes and the blue light of her implants flickered, then changed rhythm, pulsing in a different pattern. "What are you doing?" Kellen asked, fascination overriding his fear. "Creating interference," she murmured, eyes still closed. "Making my signature unclear, like static." I returned my attention to the ship's systems, diverting power from non-essential functions to boost our chances of a clean getaway. "How long can you maintain it?" "Not long, minutes perhaps." "That might be enough." I turned to Kellen. "We need a distraction, something to draw their attention while we break free." A smile spread across his face, the first I'd seen from the usually somber scientist. "I may have just the thing." He reached into his case and pulled out a small cylindrical device. Experimental EMP generator, designed for medical use to reset malfunctioning implants. But with some adjustments, he twisted something on the device and it began to hum. It should create quite a light show across Kuros's communication grid. "Will it hurt Nova?" I asked, eyeing the device warily. "Her implants are already isolated from external systems thanks to our modifications. She should be insulated." He glanced at Nova for confirmation. She nodded, though her focus remained elsewhere. "I am contained now, self-sustaining." "Do it," I ordered Kellen. And everyone hang on. The moment that thing goes off, we're breaking free, ready or not. Kellen moved to the airlock, setting the device up with quick practice movements. 3-minute delay. He reported returning to the cockpit and strapping himself into one of the rear seats. Better make them count. The seconds ticked by with excruciating slowness. On the external cameras, I could see Dominion troops moving into position around our ship, their black armor distinctive against Kuros's rusty landscape. They carried weapons designed for disabling rather than killing. They wanted Nova intact. 2 minutes, Kellen announced, checking a small timer on his wrist. Nova's concentration never wavered, but I could see the strain on her face. Whatever she was doing to mask her neural signature was taking a toll. Sweat beaded on her forehead, and the organic parts of her body trembled with effort. 1 minute, Kellen called. I finalized the launch sequence, finger hovering over the emergency release for the docking clamps. It would cause damage to the ship and to the station, but at this point, that was a secondary concern. 30 seconds. Ready, Nova? I asked softly. She nodded, her eyes still closed. Ready. 10 seconds. 5, 3, 2, 1. A brilliant flash of blue-white energy rippled across the station, followed by darkness as every system momentarily went dead. The emergency lights in the cockpit flickered on, casting everything in an eerie red glow. I slammed my hand down on the emergency release and fired the engines at full thrust. The last horizon lurched violently as the clamps gave way, metal screeching in protest. Proximity alarms blared as we lifted off, narrowly missing the docking tower. They're blind, Kellen reported, watching the external feeds as they came back online. Comms down, weapons systems non-responsive. I pushed the engines harder, angling us toward the upper atmosphere. The ship groaned under the strain but held together. Within moments, we'd broken through Kuros's thin atmosphere and into open space, setting course for the jump point. I announced, hands flying over the controls. Nova, how are you holding up? When she didn't respond, I glanced over. She had slumped in her seat, eyes closed, the blue light of her implants dim and irregular. Nova. Kellen was already unbuckling, moving to check on her. She's overextended, he reported, checking her pulse. The effort of masking her signature combined with the EMP, her system is in shock. Will she be okay? I demanded, torn between concern for her and the need to focus on our escape. I don't know, he admitted, already pulling medical equipment from a compartment. Get us to that jump point. I'll do what I can for her here. The ship's sensors picked up energy signatures behind us. The Dominion patrol vessel had recovered from the EMP faster than expected and was in pursuit. They couldn't catch us before we reached the jump point, but it would be close. I pushed the last horizon to her limits, watching the distance to the jump coordinates tick down. Behind us, the Dominion vessel was charging weapons, not to destroy us likely, but to disable our engines. Jump in 30 seconds, I called out. Kellen, secure Nova for the transition. He nodded, strapping her into her seat and bracing himself beside her. The hyperdrive began its distinctive whine as it powered up, the sound increasing in pitch as we approached the critical moment. 10 seconds to jump, I announced. Hang on. The proximity alert shrieked as the Dominion vessel fired some kind of ion pulse designed to disrupt our systems. It caught the edge of our shields, sending cascading failures through the secondary systems. Jump now, I shouted, punching the hyperdrive activation. For a terrible moment, nothing happened. The ship shuddered, alarms blaring as the hyperdrive struggled to engage. Then, with a final surge of power, reality outside the viewport stretched and twisted, and we were gone, hurtling through hyperspace toward uncertain safety. As the blue-white swirl of hyperspace enveloped us, I let out a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. We'd made it. For now. I set the autopilot and turned my attention to Nova. She was still unconscious, her skin pale, the implants along her neck and temples flickering erratically. Kellen worked over her with focused intensity, adjusting connections and monitoring vital signs. How is she? I asked, moving to her side. Stable, but her system took a significant shock, he replied without looking up. The EMP affected her more than I anticipated. The neural pathways we reconfigured are struggling to maintain coherence. I watched her labored breathing, guilt twisting in my gut. Can you fix it? I'm trying. He attached a small device to the implant at her temple. This should help stabilize the neural oscillation. As if in response, Nova's eyes fluttered open. For a moment, they were unfocused, and then she seemed to recognize us. "We escaped." Her voice was weak, barely audible over the hum of the hyperdrive. "We did," I confirmed, relief washing over me. "Thanks to you." A ghost of a smile touched her lips before her eyes closed again, this time in what appeared to be natural sleep rather than unconsciousness. Kellen checked her readings and nodded satisfied. "She needs rest. The neural pathways need time to re-establish themselves after the disruption." I straightened, glancing at the hyperspace readings. "We've got about 4 hours until we reach Helios Station." "That enough time?" "For basic recovery, yes, but Jace..." He hesitated, his expression grave. "What you saw her do, masking her neural signature, possibly influencing the Dominion troops. That's just a fraction of her capabilities, even in her damaged state. The Dominion won't stop hunting for her. She's too valuable an asset." "She's not an asset," I corrected sharply. "She's a person." "Yes, she is," he agreed quietly. "But to them, she'll always be a weapon first, and they don't like losing their weapons." I looked down at Nova's sleeping form, at the strange mixture of vulnerability and power she represented. "Then we'll just have to make sure they don't find her." Kellen didn't look convinced. "The galaxy's a big place, but the Dominion's reach is long, especially when they're bored, motivated." "Then we'll go somewhere they can't reach," I said with more confidence than I felt. "There are still places beyond their influence. We'll find one." He studied me for a moment, then nodded slowly. "I hope you were right, Renn, for all our sakes." As Kellen returned to monitoring Nova, I moved back to the pilot's seat, watching the hyperdrive readings and considering our options. Helios Station would only be a temporary stop, crowded enough to disappear for a short time, but still within Dominion territory. We'd need to move further out, perhaps to the fringe systems, where Dominion control was more theoretical than actual. But first, we needed to understand exactly what we were dealing with. Nova had mentioned something called the Siren Vault, the repository of all Siren project data. If we could access that information, we might learn how to better help her recovery and perhaps find a way to permanently shield her from Dominion detection. It was a long shot, but right now long shots were all we had. The last horizon emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the Helios system. Engines sputtering as the strain of our hasty jump took its toll. Warning lights flashed across the console, indicating multiple system failures. "That doesn't sound good," Kellen observed from behind me. "Hyperdrive motivators shot," I confirmed, scanning the damage reports. "We'll need repairs before we can jump again." Nova had recovered consciousness during the journey, though she remained weak. She sat in the co-pilot's seat, watching the starfield with an intensity that suggested she was seeing more than just stars. "There's a Dominion presence here," she said quietly. "Not hunting yet, but vigilant." "Standard patrol?" I asked, adjusting our approach to keep us among the commercial traffic heading toward the station. She nodded. "Routine security. They haven't received the alert from Kuros yet." That gave us a small window of opportunity, time to dock, make critical repairs, and get supplies before the hunt picked up again. I altered our transponder signature using one of the alternate identities I kept for emergencies. The last horizon became the Stellar Drift, a mid-level cargo hauler with legitimate business at Helios. "Will that fool them?" Kellen asked, eyeing the transponder modifications. "Long enough to get docked and undercover," I replied. "After that, we'll need to move fast." Helios Station loomed ahead, a massive structure orbiting the system's gas giant. Unlike Kuros, Helios was a thriving commercial hub, thousands of ships coming and going each day, carrying everything from legal goods to contraband that the station authorities pretended not to notice. Our approach was approved without incident, and I guided the ship into one of the public docking bays on the station's outer ring. As the docking clamps engaged, I powered down the main systems, leaving only essential life support running. "Here's the plan," I said, turning to Kellen and Nova. "I'll find a mechanic who can get us the parts for the hyperdrive without asking too many questions. Kellen, you handle supplies, food, medical equipment, whatever else we might need for an extended journey." "And me?" Nova asked, her golden eyes fixed on mine. I hesitated. Having her move around the station was a risk. Her appearance was distinctive, and her implants might attract unwanted attention. But keeping her confined to the ship carried its own dangers. "You're with me," I decided, "but we'll need to disguise you a bit." I found a hooded cloak in one of the storage compartments, dark gray and worn, but adequate for our purposes. Nova pulled it on the hood, casting her face in shadow. With her mechanical arm tucked close to her body and her unusual eyes hidden, she might pass for human, or at least for one of the many humanoid species that frequented the station. Remember, we're just ordinary travelers making repairs, I reminded everyone as we prepared to disembark. Nothing suspicious, nothing unusual. If we get separated, meet back at the ship in 3 hours. If any of us aren't back by then, assume compromise and leave, Kellen finished grimly. Understood. The bustling activity of Helios Station hit us like a wall. As we stepped off the ship, the noise of 1,000 conversations, the smells of dozens of food vendors, the press of bodies moving through the overcrowded concourse. After the isolation of Kuros, it was overwhelming. I noticed Nova flinch slightly at the sensory barrage. "You okay?" I asked quietly. She nodded, though her body remained tense. Many emotions, many intentions. It's loud. I remembered what she'd said about her empathic abilities, muffled now without the Dominion's enhancement, but still present. This many people in close proximity must be like standing in the middle of a shouting crowd for her. "Stay close," I said, offering my arm for support. "Focus on me if it helps." We made our way through the concourse toward the maintenance sector, where independent mechanics operated workshops for ships that couldn't afford the official station services. Kellen had already peeled off toward the supply markets, promising to meet us back at the ship. The mechanic I had in mind was an old contact from my courier days, a Ratari named Zell, who asked few questions and had access to parts that weren't strictly on the market. Her workshop was tucked away in one of the lower levels, accessible through a maze of service corridors that helped us avoid the main security checkpoints. Jace Renn Zell greeted me as we entered her cluttered workspace. Her 4 eyes blinked in sequence, a sign of surprise in her species. "Thought you'd been spaced years ago." "Reports of my death were greatly exaggerated," I replied with a forced smile. "Need some work done," quietly. Her upper eyes narrowed while her lower ones assessed Nova, who stood slightly behind me, still shrouded in her cloak. "What kind of work?" "Hyperdrive motivator. H47 model needs a full replacement of the crystalline matrix and potentially the stabilization coils." Zell whistled a sound like steam escaping a pressure valve. "Not cheap, that job, and parts for H47s aren't exactly common these days." "I know, but I know you can find them." She considered this, all 4 eyes blinking thoughtfully. "Maybe, for the right price." Her gaze shifted back to Nova. "What's with your friend, Sci-Fi?" I moved slightly, positioning myself between Zell and Nova. "Just private. Can you help us or not?" Zell shrugged her massive shoulders. "For you, Ren, sure. Old time's sake. But it'll take a few hours to get the parts. Come back around shift change." As we turned to leave, the station's public announcement system crackled to life. "Attention all citizens and visitors. Dominion Security has issued an alert for suspected fugitives traveling aboard the vessel Last Horizon. All personnel are advised to report any sightings to the nearest security checkpoint. This is a Priority 1 directive." Zell's 4 eyes widened, then narrowed as she looked between us and the speaker. "Something you want to tell me, Ren?" "The less you know, the better," I replied, already calculating our options. "Can you still get those parts?" She hesitated only briefly before nodding. "Yeah, but the price just doubled." "Fair enough, we'll be back." As we hurried through the service corridors, Nova kept pace better than I expected, her movements becoming more fluid as she adapted to her partially mechanical body. "They found us faster than anticipated," she observed, voice steady despite the danger. "The question is, how?" I muttered. "We changed our transponder, came in under a different identifier." "The neural signature," she replied. "When I connected with the ship's systems to help navigate, it could have been detected by automated Dominion security protocols." That made sense, and it meant we had even less time than I'd thought. If the Dominion could track her neural signature through standard system interfaces, nowhere with modern technology would be truly safe. We needed to get back to the ship, warned Kellen, and figure out our next move. But as we rounded a corner into a more crowded section of the station, I saw them. Dominion security forces, their black armor unmistakable, even among the diverse crowd. They were methodically checking IDs, their helmet visors scanning faces against some database. I pulled Nova into a side passage, heart pounding. Checkpoint, we need another way around. She nodded, surprisingly calm. Service ducts, level below us. I can sense a path with fewer people. I looked at her sharply. You can map the station through emotions. Not precisely, but I can feel concentrations of consciousness, voids where there are none. She pointed downward. There. Following her guidance, we found a maintenance hatch that led to a network of service ducts. They were cramped and poorly lit, but mercifully empty of both people and security drones. We moved as quickly as we could through the narrow passages, Nova occasionally pausing to listen with her empathic sense before directing our next turn. We were about halfway back to the docking bay when Nova suddenly froze, her body going rigid. "They're here," she whispered. "Who, where?" I asked, hand moving to my blaster. "Sirens." Her voice was strained, almost fearful. "Two of them. They're scanning, looking for me." A cold weight settled in my stomach. If the Dominion had deployed other sirens to find Nova, our chances of escape had just plummeted. They would be able to sense her as she could sense them, perhaps more effectively if their implants were fully functional. "Can you hide from them like you did on Kuros?" She shook her head, frustration evident. "Not for long, not against trained sirens. They know the frequencies, the patterns to look for." "Then we don't hide," I decided. "We run, fast as we can, straight to the ship." "Ready," she nodded, determination replacing fear on her face. We increased our pace through the ducts, no longer bothering with stealth. Speed was our only advantage now. We emerged from the maintenance network near our docking bay, only to find it cordoned off by Dominion forces. 6 troops in full tactical gear, plus a civilian-clothed figure, whose stance and stillness marked them as something else entirely, another siren presumably. "Back," I hissed, pulling Nova away before they could spot us. "We need another approach." "The external maintenance walkways," Nova suggested, pointing to a nearby airlock. They circled the entire docking ring. We could reach our ship from the outside. It was risky. The walkways were meant for repair crews in environment suits, not unprotected humanoids making a desperate escape. But with Dominion forces blocking the main entrance, we had few options. The airlock was unguarded, likely because no one expected fugitives to attempt an EVA without proper equipment. I overrode the safety protocols with a security chip I'd held onto from my courier days, and the door slid open with a warning beep. "It's going to be cold out there," I warned Nova, "and the air will be thin. We'll need to move fast." She nodded, pulling her cloak tighter around her shoulders. "I can adjust my metabolic rate through the implants. Temporary survival enhancement. Another Dominion feature that might actually save us for once." I took a deep breath as the airlock cycled, then the outer door opened, exposing us to the near vacuum of the station's exterior. The cold hit like a physical blow, instantly numbing exposed skin. The walkway stretched before us, a narrow metal path with only a thin railing separating us from the void of space. Above the gas giant, Helios orbited, dominated the view, its swirling storms casting an eerie light over everything. We moved as quickly as we dared, the magnetic soles of our boots, the only thing keeping us tethered to the station. Each breath was an effort, the thin atmosphere barely providing enough oxygen. Nova seemed to be faring better than I was, her implants glowing with increased activity as they compensated for the hostile environment. We had almost reached the section where our ship was docked when the exterior door ahead of us began to cycle open. Someone else was coming onto the walkway. There was nowhere to hide, nowhere to run except forward or back. And back led to the sirens we were trying to escape. "Whatever happens," I gasped to Nova, the cold making speech difficult. "Get to the ship. Find Kellen. Go." The airlock door opened fully, revealing a figure in Dominion tactical gear. Not a full environment suit, but more protection than we had. The figure stepped onto the walkway, moving with unnatural grace, despite the near vacuum. Another siren. Had to be. I could tell it was female from her build, raised a hand in what might have been a greeting or a threat. Her helmet obscured her features, but I could feel her focus lock onto Nova like a physical force. "Subject J724, her voice came through an external speaker, distorted but understandable. "You are malfunctioning. Return for recalibration." Nova stiffened beside me. I am not malfunctioning, she called back, her voice stronger than I expected in the thin air. I am free. The Siren tilted her head, the gesture somehow conveying confusion despite the expressionless helmet. Freedom is irrelevant. You are Dominion property. Compliance is required. I edged closer to Nova, my hand on my blaster, though I doubted it would be effective against a Dominion-enhanced operative. She's not property, I shouted against the wind. She's a person. The Siren ignored me completely, focus remaining on Nova. Final warning J724. Return willingly or force will be authorized. Nova's implants began to glow more intensely, the blue light visible even through her cloak. I could feel a strange pressure building in the air between the two Sirens, not physical, but something else. A battle of wills, perhaps? Or something more exotic happening on a level I couldn't perceive. I am Nova now, she said, her voice taking on a resonant quality that seemed to bypass the thin atmosphere. And I will not return. The Dominion Siren took a step forward, raising her arm. Something in the gauntlet she wore began to emit a high-pitched whine that sent daggers of pain through my skull. Nova gasped beside me, her organic hand flying to her temple as her implants flickered erratically. Neural disruptor, she managed through gritted teeth, designed to override our autonomy. I didn't hesitate. I drew my blaster and fired at the Siren's extended arm. The shot connected, but instead of disabling her, it merely knocked her aim off. The neural disruptor's beam hit the walkway near our feet, melting the metal with unexpected heat. The Siren recovered quickly, adjusting her stance and raising the disruptor again. But Nova had used the momentary disruption to her advantage. Her mechanical arm shot out in a pulse of blue energy, similar to but more focused than what I'd seen from her implants before, lanced toward the other Siren. It connected with the Dominion operative's helmet, causing the electronic systems to spark and malfunction. The Siren staggered, momentarily disoriented, as her helmet systems went haywire. Run! Nova urged, pulling me forward. We dashed past the struggling Siren, who clawed at her helmet, trying to reset the systems or remove it entirely. We reached the airlock near our docking bay and cycled through as quickly as the safety protocols would allow. As the inner door finally opened, warm air and normal pressure enveloped us like a blessing. But we had no time to recover. The alarm was sounding throughout this section, and voices could be heard shouting commands. Dominion forces have the ship surrounded. Nova stated, her enhanced senses clearly picking up details I couldn't. 6 troops, another Siren, and... She paused, her expression changing to one of surprise. Kellen is there. Captured? I asked, dreading the answer. No, he's with them, talking, calm. A pit formed in my stomach. Had Kellen sold us out? It seemed unlikely after all he had done to help Nova, but the Dominion had ways of being persuasive. We crept closer, using the cargo containers near the docking bay for cover. From our position, I could see the last horizon surrounded by Dominion troops. Kellen stood near the ramp, conversing with a tall, austere woman in a Dominion command uniform. No signs of duress, no restraints. He was gesturing as he spoke, his manner almost collegial. He betrayed us, I murmured, the realization landing like a blow. Nova's head tilted, her expression concentrated. He's explaining something about me, about the implants. She frowned. He says he can make me functional again. Restore full Dominion control. Anger flared hot and immediate. After everything we'd been through, after helping Nova begin to reclaim herself from the Dominion's conditioning, Kellen was offering to reverse it all, to turn her back into their weapon. We need a new plan, I said, scanning the area for options. We can't get to the ship, and even if we could, the hyperdrive isn't repaired. Nova's golden eyes met mine, something resolute hardening in them. I can create a diversion, something that will draw their attention, give you a chance to escape. I'm not leaving you, I said firmly. You must. I can influence them, confuse them, but not for long, and not with another Siren present to counter me. Her mechanical hand gripped my arm with surprising strength. Get to Zell, get the parts, find another ship. Before I could argue further, she pressed something into my hand, a small data chip I hadn't seen before. Coordinates, she explained, to the Siren Vault. I pulled them from the ship's navigation system when I was helping plot our course. The Dominion thought those memories were suppressed, but a small defiant smile. They underestimated me. I stared at the chip, then back at her. "Nova, go," she said softly. "I'll find you, I promise." Without waiting for my response, she stepped out from behind the cargo containers. Her cloak fell away, revealing her slender form with its distinctive implants now glowing bright blue-white in the dim lighting of the docking bay. She walked with newfound confidence, each step deliberate and unhurried, directly toward the Dominion forces. They noticed her immediately. Weapons were raised, orders shouted. The Siren among them shifted into a defensive stance. Kellen turned his expression a mixture of surprise and something unreadable. Then Nova did something I hadn't seen before. She raised both hands, organic and mechanical, and the implants throughout her body pulsed with coordinated light. A wave of something rippled outward from her, visible only as a slight distortion in the air, like heat rising from hot metal. The effect was immediate and unsettling. Every Dominion soldier froze, their weapons lowering. Even the commanding officer seemed suddenly uncertain, blinking rapidly as if trying to clear her vision. Only the other Siren seemed partially resistant, staggering slightly, but remaining focused on Nova. I understood then what Nova was doing, using her Elysian empathic abilities, enhanced by the Dominion's own technology, to project confusion and uncertainty to everyone in range. Everyone except me somehow shielded from the effect. It was my chance. I slipped from cover and moved swiftly along the edge of the docking bay, headed for the exit that would lead to Zell's workshop. I glanced back once to see Nova advancing steadily toward the Dominion forces, her focus absolute, while they remained in disarray. Only the other Siren moved to intercept her, the two enhanced operatives circling each other like predators. As I reached the exit, I saw them engaged not physically, but in some kind of psychic contest that made the air between them shimmer and distort. It took every ounce of willpower to continue forward, to leave Nova behind. But she had given me this chance, and I couldn't waste it. The coordinates to the Siren Vault might be our only hope of truly freeing her from the Dominion's influence. I ran through the station's corridors, avoiding the main thoroughfares where security would be heaviest. The data chip felt like it was burning a hole in my pocket, a small piece of hope in an increasingly desperate situation. Zell was waiting when I burst into her workshop, her force eyes taking in my disheveled appearance and the clear panic on my face. "Dominion's got your ship," she stated matter-of-factly. "Heard the alert." "I need those parts," I gasped, still breathless from the run and the exposure to vacuum. "And transport. Private transport off the station." She studied me for a long moment. "This isn't just about evading customs anymore, is it, Renn? This is serious trouble." "Life or death," I confirmed. "Not just for me." Something shifted in her expression, a softening around her eyes. "For the girl, the one with a hood." I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. Zell sighed, a sound like wind through hollow tubes. "Must be quite a story." She turned to a secured cabinet and began entering a complex code. "Lucky for you, I've got a soft spot for lost causes." The cabinet opened to reveal not just the hyperdrive parts we'd discussed, but an array of other equipment, some of it clearly military-grade and highly illegal, outside Dominion control. She collected several components and placed them in a carry case. "My brother runs salvage operations out of the mining platforms in the asteroid belt," she said, handing me the case. "He's leaving in 30 minutes from Bay 12. Hidden compartments in his ship designed for special cargo." She produced a small device that looked like a standard ID chip. "Show him this. Tell him Zell says it's a blood debt." I took the chip, overwhelmed by the unexpected help. "Why are you doing this?" All four of her eyes blinked in unison, a sign of deep emotion in her species. "I was a special project once too, before I escaped." She gestured vaguely at her lower set of eyes. "Enhancement program, early prototype. Not as sophisticated as what they're doing now, but..." She trailed off, then straightened. "Go. Bay 12, don't miss that launch." I thanked her quickly and turned to leave the hyperdrive parts and the data chip from Nova secure in my possession. But as I reached the door, I hesitated. "The girl Nova, if she comes looking for me..." "I'll tell her where to find you," Zell promised. "Now go." The journey to the asteroid mining platform was tense but uneventful. Zell's brother, a taciturn Ratari named Drav, asked no questions after seeing the chip, simply directing me to a hidden compartment in his salvage hauler, where I spent the 8-hour journey in cramped, anxious silence. I had no way of knowing what had happened to Nova after I left. Had her diversion worked? Had she been recaptured? Or had she somehow managed to escape and was now looking for me? The uncertainty was maddening, but I focused on what I could control, planning our next move based on the coordinates she'd given me. The Siren Vault was located on a Dominion research station called the Bastion in a remote system near the galactic core. Getting there would be challenging enough. Infiltrating a secure Dominion facility seemed nearly impossible. But if the vault contained what Nova believed the complete technical specifications for the Siren program, it might hold the key to permanently freeing her from Dominion control. Drav dropped me at the mining platform with a curt nod and a single word of advice: run. The platform was a ramshackle collection of habitation modules and industrial equipment populated by the kind of people who preferred to keep the Dominion at a very considerable distance. Perfect for a temporary hideout. I used some of my dwindling funds to secure passage on a bulk cargo hauler bound for the fringe territories, where I might find the kind of disreputable but skilled individuals needed for a job like this. The hyperdrive parts from Zell would be essential for whatever ship we eventually acquired. Dominion security at the Bastion would necessitate a fast, reliable escape vehicle. 3 weeks passed in a blur of movement, always staying one step ahead of potential pursuit. I followed a circuitous route through the fringe-changing ships, frequently using aliases and cash transactions to avoid leaving a trail. All the while, I kept an ear out for any news of a captured Siren or Dominion operations at Helios Station. The lack of information was both reassuring and concerning. Either Nova had escaped attention altogether, or the Dominion was keeping her recapture extremely quiet. Eventually, I found myself on Vale Station, a notorious haven for those operating outside Dominion law. Here I hoped to find both the crew and the ship needed to attempt the seemingly impossible breaking into the most secure Dominion research facility in the galaxy. I was negotiating with a former Dominion pilot about acquiring her decommissioned scout vessel when a commotion broke out near the station's central market. Curious voices murmured about a stranger who had arrived asking questions about me. My hand moved to my blaster, anticipating Dominion agents. But the description that filtered through the crowd made my heart race: strange golden eyes and metal arm that glows blue. I pushed through the gathering onlookers until I saw her Nova standing in the center of the market, her distinctive features partially hidden by a traveler's coat, but unmistakable to anyone who knew what to look for. She looked stronger than when I'd last seen her, more assured in her movements, though there was a new scar visible along her jawline. "Nova," I called out, hardly believing she was really there. She turned those golden eyes locking onto mine across the crowd. For a heartbeat, she stood frozen, and then she was moving toward me with a grace that seemed both human and something more. We met in the middle of the market, observers forgotten. "You found me," I said, my voice rough with emotion. Her small smile was like the sunrise after the longest night. I promised I would. I had 1,000 questions: how she had escaped, how she had tracked me across the fringe, what had happened with the Dominion forces in Kellen, but they could wait. What mattered was that she was here alive and apparently free. "The coordinates," she said, her voice low. "Did you keep them safe?" I nodded. "I've been planning, working out how we might reach the vault." "Not we," she corrected gently. "I must go alone." "That's not happening," I replied immediately. "The Bastion is the most secure Dominion facility outside the core worlds. You can't just walk in." "I don't intend to walk in." Her eyes held a determination I hadn't seen before. "I intend to be invited." Over the next hours, as we made our way to the small quarters I'd secured on the station, Nova explained what had happened after I left Helios. The psychic battle with the other Siren had been a diversion within a diversion. While appearing to focus solely on disorienting the Dominion forces, she had actually been probing the other Siren's mind, extracting information about Dominion security protocols, and most importantly, the schedule for the Siren project's periodic evaluation. Every 6 months, all active Sirens are recalled to the Bastion for assessment and recalibration, she explained. The next cycle begins in 2 weeks. The Dominion believes I've gone rogue, but they don't know I have this information. They'll be expecting me to run to hide, not to walk directly back into their facility. "That's suicide," I argued. "They'll capture you the moment you arrive." "They'll try," she acknowledged, "but I've been practicing. learning to use these implants on my own terms without their control module. She demonstrated by causing the blue light beneath her skin to pulse in complex patterns. I can mimic an active Siren's neural signature to now at least well enough to get past the initial security scans. And then, you just walk into the vault and download the data. Not exactly. She hesitated, then continued more carefully. Kellen helped me understand more about how the implants work. Before we were separated, I stiffened at the mention of his name. Kellen betrayed us. I saw him with the Dominion forces offering to help them recapture you. No, she said firmly. He was playing a role, creating another layer of diversion. Her expression softened. He sacrificed himself, Jace. Made the Dominion believe he was cooperating so that the commander would focus on him instead of pursuing you immediately. It gave me the opening I needed to affect their perceptions. I wanted to believe her, but the memory of Kellen's apparently easy conversation with the Dominion commander was difficult to reconcile with such a selfless act. What happened to him? Her eyes fell. They took him. He's likely at the Bastion now being interrogated. Another reason I need to go. She looked up, resolve clear in her expression. I won't leave him there just as you didn't leave me. The plan she outlined was audacious, bordering on insane. She would approach the Bastion as if returning for scheduled recalibration using the neural signature mimicry to get past initial security. Once inside, she would use her Elysian empathic abilities, now functioning increasingly independently from Dominion control, to navigate to the vault, extract the data we needed, and locate Kellen. All while avoiding the other Sirens, who would likely sense her presence when she was inside. You're talking about fooling people who literally built you, I pointed out, who know every detail of how your implants function. Which is precisely why they won't expect this approach, she countered. Their arrogance is their weakness. They believe their conditioning is absolute, their control infallible. They cannot conceive of a Siren choosing to return, so they won't be looking for that deception. I could see the logic, but the risks remained astronomical. And where do I fit into this suicide mission? You'll be nearby with a ship ready for our escape once I have what we need. She reached out her organic hand, finding mine. I know what I'm asking, Jace, but this may be our only chance to truly break free of them, not just run and hide for the rest of our lives. I looked at her, this woman who had been shattered and remade as a weapon, who had nonetheless found the strength to reclaim her own identity, who was willing to walk back into hell for a chance at real freedom. How could I possibly let her go alone? I'll get us a ship, I said, squeezing her hand gently, the fastest one I can find. Over the next 2 weeks, we prepared meticulously. I acquired the scout vessel from the former Dominion pilot using most of my remaining funds and promising a share of the very illegal salvage we hoped to acquire from the Bastion. Nova practiced with her implants, daily refining her control and expanding her understanding of their capabilities. Together, we studied what little public information existed about the Bastion's security systems, looking for any potential weakness or oversight. The night before our departure, as Nova ran final checks on her implants, I found myself watching her with a mixture of admiration and fear. Despite everything the Dominion had done to her, she had found a way to turn their own technology against them, to reclaim not just her freedom, but her sense of self. Nova, I said quietly, breaking the concentrated silence between us. If this works, if we get the data from the vault, what then? What do you want to do with your freedom? She looked up, those strange golden eyes reflecting the dim light of our quarters. I haven't thought that far ahead, she admitted. For so long, there was only the next mission, the next target. She paused, considering. But there are others like me. Other Sirens who might not even know they could be free. I think I would want to help them if I could. One jailbreak at a time, I asked with a small smile. Something like that. She returned the smile, then grew serious again. What about you? What do you want after this? It was a question I hadn't really considered. For years, I'd been running from the Dominion, from my past, from the memory of Talon's death. I'd never stopped long enough to think about what I was running toward. I want to stop looking over my shoulder, I said finally. To find a corner of the galaxy where the Dominion's shadow doesn't reach. Maybe do some good for a change instead of just surviving. She nodded, understanding in her gaze. Then we have compatible goals. The journey to the Bastion took 3 days through hyperspace, even with the scout vessel's enhanced engines. We arrived at the edge of the system, keeping our distance from the security perimeter while making final preparations. The Bastion itself was an imposing structure, a massive space station surrounded by a defensive network of satellites and patrol vessels. Getting Nova onto the station would be the easy part, relatively speaking. Extracting her and whatever data she acquired would be the true challenge. "Remember, Tatum," I said as she prepared to depart in the scout vessel's small shuttle, "if anything feels wrong, abort. The data isn't worth your life." She adjusted the Dominion uniform we'd acquired through less than legal channels, the familiar colors sitting strangely on her after all this time. "I'll be careful," she promised. "Be ready to move quickly when I signal." The moment of parting was awkward, charged with things unsaid. She was walking into extreme danger, and we both knew the odds of success were slim. I wanted to say something meaningful, something that conveyed everything she had come to mean to me in our short time together. But words seemed inadequate. In the end, she was the one who bridged the gap between us. Her organic hand touched my face briefly, a gesture so gentle it barely registered. "Thank you," she said simply, "for seeing me, the real me." Then she was gone, the shuttle detaching from our vessel and making its way toward the Bastion, transmitting the falsified credentials we hoped would get her through the first layer of security. The waiting was excruciating. I monitored communications channels and kept the ship at ready status, prepared to execute emergency extraction at a moment's notice. Hours passed with no word, no signal. I began to fear the worst, that she had been captured immediately, that the deception had failed, that I had allowed her to walk into a trap from which there was no escape. Then, just as I was considering a desperate attempt to infiltrate the station myself, the communication panel lit up with an incoming transmission, origin point the Bastion itself. The message was brief and coded using a cipher Nova and I had established before her departure. 3 words that made my heart race: vault accessed, standby. She had made it inside, had reached the Siren vault itself. Now came the most dangerous part: extracting the data and escaping with it. Another hour passed in tense silence before the next message arrived. Package secured, extraction coordinates attached. 2 passengers. 2. She had found Kellen. I plotted the course to the extraction coordinates, an automated maintenance airlock on the station's outer ring, theoretically accessible without triggering main security protocols if one had the right codes, which apparently Nova now did. As I maneuvered the ship into position, keeping a wary eye on the Bastion's patrol patterns, I prepared for a rapid pickup. The airlock would only cycle once before security was alerted. We would have seconds, not minutes. The scout vessel's sensors picked up the faint energy signature of the airlock activating. I positioned us as close as I dared, extending the docking tube to create a direct path from the airlock to our ship. The outer door of the airlock slid open, revealing 2 figures in environment suits. Nova's distinctive silhouette was unmistakable even in the bulky suit. The other figure was taller, moving with the awkward gait of someone injured or weakened. Kellen, presumably. They pushed off from the airlock, using the minimal gravity to glide across the short distance to our docking tube. Just as they reached us, alarms began to blare across the Bastion. Our sensors detected multiple patrol vessels changing course, converging on our position. We had minutes at most before they were in weapons range. "Go!" Nova shouted as soon as she and Kellen were through the airlock, not even waiting to remove her helmet. "They know I took it. Every ship on the station will be after us." I didn't need to be told twice. I disengaged the docking tube and fired the main engines, accelerating away from the Bastion as rapidly as the ship could manage. The patrol vessels adjusted course to intercept, but our scout ship had the advantage of speed, if not firepower. "Plotting jump coordinates," I announced as Nova helped Kellen remove his environment suit. The scientist looked haggard, with dark circles under his eyes and new lines etched into his face. Whatever the Dominion had done to him during his captivity had clearly taken a toll. "Did you get it?" I asked Nova as she removed her own helmet, revealing flushed cheeks and eyes bright with exhilaration. She reached into a compartment of her suit and produced a data crystal glowing faintly blue with the density of information stored within. Everything. The complete Siren project database, technical specifications, neural pathways, conditioning protocols. Her voice grew softer. And how to reverse them. The significance of what she held was staggering. Not just a means to protect her from Dominion recapture, but potentially a way to undo the invasive changes they had made to her mind and body. to restore her to something closer to her original self if she chose that path. "We're not clear yet," Kellen warned, his voice hoarse. "That data crystal has a quantum tag. They can track it across standard hyperspace jumps. Then we'll take a non-standard route," I replied, feeding coordinates into the navigation system that would take us through a nebula known for disrupting quantum signatures. "Hold on, this might get rough." As the ship accelerated toward the jump point, Nova moved to the co-pilot's seat beside me. Her implants were glowing with sustained blue light, a sign of heightened activity. "They're deploying countermeasures." She reported, her expression distant, as she apparently sensed or detected something beyond normal perception. "Trying to establish a lock on the crystal." "Can you block it?" I asked, pushing the engines harder. She nodded, placing her mechanical hand over the data crystal. The blue glow of her implants intensified, spreading to encompass the crystal as well. "Temporarily, but we need to jump soon." The patrol vessels were closing rapidly, their weapon systems charging. Our shields would withstand maybe 1 or 2 hits before failing. We needed another minute to reach the jump point, a minute we might not have. Kellen staggered to the engineering console, his movements pained but determined. "I can give you more power to the engines," he offered. I passed the safety regulators. "Do it," I ordered, focusing on keeping us on the most direct course to the jump point. "Nova, how's that quantum lock coming?" "Still holding," she replied through gritted teeth, the strain of manipulating the quantum signature evident on her face. "But I can feel them pushing harder." The ship shuddered as Kellen's modifications took effect, the engines roaring with dangerous intensity. Warning lights flashed across the console, indicating systems approaching critical failure, but the jump point was now only seconds away. A blast of energy from the lead patrol vessel grazed our shields, sending cascading failures through secondary systems. Another direct hit would cripple us. "Almost there," I called out, watching the distance tick down. 3, 2, 1, towing. The hyperspace engines engaged with a sound like thunder reality outside the viewport, stretching and distorting as we made the jump. For a terrible moment, I thought we weren't going to make it, that the engines would fail, or the patrol vessels would land a final fatal shot. Then we were through the swirling blue-white of hyperspace enveloping us as we left the Bastion and its pursuers behind. Not safe, not yet. Not while the quantum tag on the data crystal could potentially lead them to us, but we had bought ourselves time. Nova's hand relaxed its grip on the crystal, the intense blue glow of her implants fading to their normal, softer light. "It worked," she said quietly, a mixture of disbelief and triumph in her voice. "We actually did it." "We're not free yet," Kellen cautioned, though there was a new light in his eyes as well. Hope rekindled after what had clearly been a harrowing captivity. "But with this data, we have a chance. A real chance." I set the autopilot and turned to face them both. "So what's the next step? How do we use this information to keep the Dominion off our backs permanently?" Kellen and Nova exchanged a look I couldn't quite interpret. Then Nova spoke, her voice steady with newfound certainty. "We don't just hide the data," she said. "We use it. We find others like me, other Sirens who might want freedom. We show them it's possible." "You're talking about dismantling the entire Siren project," I realized. "Taking on the Dominion directly." She nodded, determination clear in her golden eyes. "They thought they were creating perfect weapons. Instead, they created their own downfall." She looked down at the data crystal in her hand, then back at me. "Will you help us?" It was a monumental task she was proposing, dangerous beyond measure, with implications that would ripple across Dominion space. The rational part of me knew we should take the Tauta and disappear into the furthest reaches of the galaxy, living out our lives in peaceful anonymity. But looking at Nova, at the strength and resolve that shone in her eyes, despite everything that had been done to her, I knew there was only one answer I could give. "I'm with you," I said simply, "whatever comes next." As our ship traveled a light deeper into the nebula, putting distance between us and potential pursuit, I watched Nova begin to examine the data crystal, with Kellen, their heads bent together over the console as they discussed technical details beyond my understanding. For the first time since I'd known her, she seemed truly focused on the future rather than merely escaping the past. They had made her a weapon, but she had become something else entirely, something even the mighty Dominion, with all its technology and control, had failed to anticipate. A person with choices, with purpose, with newfound freedom. Whatever challenges awaited us, Whatever dangers the Dominion might still pose, one thing was certain: Nova was no longer broken, and neither was I. If you enjoyed this story of courage, freedom, and finding humanity in the darkest places, please hit that like button and share your thoughts in the comments below. I'd love to hear which part of Nova and Jace's journey resonated with you the most. For more science fiction stories that explore what it means to be human in a universe of advanced technology and interstellar conflict, be sure to subscribe to the channel. New stories are posted every week, each one crafted to take you to worlds beyond imagination. Until next time, remember that even in the vastness of space, the most powerful force will always be the human spirit. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you among the stars.